It's about that time. You know, it's like crazy, because in the city, it's not like who is he? It's like it's about time.
Back at you right here, your man in the streets, DJ Quest 95, sitting here with none other than Colby Colb 1079. This is Intro Magazine. We figuring we're gonna go into the next segment right here and want to go into a little bit of your history. You worked with some amazing people in your past. I mean, you were there when you were there in the beginning of hip hop. Like, I was listening to my boombox when it all started, you know. And one person that you were able to work with, probably before he really got started and what he's doing, was Questlove from The Roots.
Yeah, Questlove from,
He's one of my favorite musicians. You know, he's more than a drummer, he's more than a DJ. A lot of people may not know he's an excellent DJ.
Yeah.
But he's a musician. He has taken The Roots to platinum places that, you know, you never thought that little band was going to go, you know. So tell me a little bit about how I was working with him back in the day.
Well, you know, one of the things that I did, you know, man, it's been 19 years now. I started a hip hop show called Radioactive in 1991, which was, you know, I was like that kid that worked at the radio station that was always into hip hop. I mean, I'm a first generation hip hop head. I grew up in between Philadelphia and New York, and my father lived in New York and my mom lived in Philly, and so I would spend my summers in New York, and we lived in Harlem, and it was really, you know, I used to sit on our steps, you know, and we lived in Spanish Harlem, and we would sit on the steps, and you could just hear hip hop, you know, you heard it. I mean, you were part of it, the culture, and so being a first generation hip hop head, and then New York radio was really the first radio to embrace it, and I was a radio junkie too, so kind of like all worked together. But when I got to Philly, when I was in college at Temple University, and I started my internship at the station, and then I ended up working at the radio station. The station at the time was kind of going through a little bit of what we just talked about what Z1079 was going through. It was like kind of like going through the motions, and the only time that you would hear hip hop would be like at night, but you really didn't hear a lot of the stuff that, you know, you would see the videos and stuff. You would never hear it. So I went to my boss and I was like, I gotta do this show. And again, you know, I was a young kid, and at that time in radio, you don't never really get a chance. They don't put you on the radio. They just don't do it. Like, you gotta go work in some small town and work your way up. But I put this presentation together because I just believe you want something, you gotta put it out there, and you gotta, you know, do your homework and you know, present it a certain way. And I put it out there and I presented it to my boss. I actually, in the back of my mind, I was like, he's gonna throw it away because, you know, he's a program director, and you know, we got stuff sitting around our desk all the time. But he was blown away. He said, yo, I want you to start, you know, next week. You know, I love it. This is great. And so it was a big deal in Philly because there weren't any hip hop shows at the time, and there was a woman named Lady B who Lady B was probably, when I was in high school, she was the premier Philadelphia. And so at the time in radio, we're talking about the mid '80s, in New York and Philly was Lady B. In New York, it was Mr. Magic and Red Alert. And so when Lady B went off the air in Philly, there was just no show for 5 years. I got the opportunity, and so it was huge for Philly because it wasn't any time there. And Questlove was a kid in high school at the Performing Arts High School, and he loved hip hop, and he loved Radioactive, and he would, like, at first the show came on at midnight, and Quest would be locked in. I mean, he really, like, his love of the music and hip hop really came out of that show. Like, he was able. It was no internet then. It wasn't none of the things that we have there now, cable, any of that stuff. So he was able to listen to the show, and he would call me up, and we would have great conversations. And so he would call, and we would just talk, and we would just kick it. And, you know, at the time he was telling me about his group, The Roots, and The Roots used to play on South Street. And if you guys go back and do your musical history, if you pull up Boyz II Men, Motown Philly, if you pull up the Motown Philly video, me and Questlove were in that video. Quest was still in high school, and he was actually playing the drums in this scene in the video. And I was sitting on the step. We were a lot younger looking at the time. But he was just such a big fan of hip hop, and so we would talk music, and he would tell me about his you know, his group, and people that know anything about the Roots, man, that don't know that the
first two albums.
What were the first 10 years of their career was like, they were straight underground.
But they were magnificent albums, and people couldn't understand when they finally got hip to them. Why is it saying track 47? See, y'all missed the whole story. It was 3 albums before this.
Yeah.
That jazz and all the from the original.
Well, they had a song called "Pass the Popcorn," which was on their first album.
Right.
This is the one that wasn't even. This is
That
before
was-
they even
that
had a
was-
deal.
that was a tape.
Yeah. No, it was an actual CD. But
Really? I got it.
I started playing that, and I remembered it was this because Black Thought was like down with a lot of different rappers in Philly. Like, so I would play a lot of local artists in Philly. Lord I Kill was a local rapper in South Philly, and he had this song out, and when he came to the station, he brought Quest. Career started taking off. I would have them on the show, and even as I grew as a personality outside of Radioactive, I was always, trying to, whenever they had an album out, we would do stuff, and then when I became a program director, I tried to support them because they weren't getting the support. They don't really get the support from the Philly people.
Really?
Because Philly is like it's like New York. It's like, Wu-Tang and, the real, Nas and Biggie, and that, you have to really understand the roots and go see them perform to understand how different it is, and that they're just a different form of hip hop. And so most people are, I use this analogy all the time here when I run into people. If you drink Sunny Delight, you think that's the best orange juice you ever had, but if you ever had fresh squeezed orange juice, you would know that that's such an amazing taste. But if all you used to is Sunny Delight and you drink fresh squeezed orange juice, you probably think it's nasty.
But speaking of fresh squeeze, you also have big jazz background and roots.
Man, you see that transition? He just transitioned out of roots, like. But yeah.
I mean, your uncle, right there, the real McCoy.
Yeah.
Then you
Tyner, yeah.
Then you worked with Miles Davis, who I'm a big fan of. Worked with his little brother.
His little brother Jojo Davis. In fact, I was just tweeting about him last night because he's my mentor. He's my radio. I didn't say his name, but I don't know what I was watching. I was watching something yesterday, and I was reading something yesterday, and it pissed me off about just about incompetence in America, and how incompetence now is sort of like a rite of passage. Like, people that are incompetent, that take shortcuts, are the ones that get the great opportunities, but the ones that work hard don't necessarily get opportunities. And I was saying that my mentor on radio was Jojo Davis, who, when I got into the station when I was a kid, I don't know, something just like, he was the hottest DJ on the radio station. He did nights, and he was just like the dude. Like, I mean, he had the whole city on fire.
That's when you were making $3.35 an hour?
I wasn't even working at the station yet. Yeah, nah, you telling my story, brother. But that's real talk. That's right. Listen, man.
I mean, but that's if it's something that you love.
Yeah, no, something you love.
You're gonna do it for near free.
I will never sell
to
my
prove
soul.
your point.
Never sell my soul for to not be happy. But anyway, JoJo was the hottest DJ on the station, and so we just started talking. And I was an intern, and he was like, he said, "What's your last name?" I said, "Tyner," and he said, "I knew something about you. You got that." He called me. He said, "Time for Tyner face." I said, "Time for Tyner, what you know about that?" Time for Tyner was one of my uncle's albums, and we kind of have the same little thing right here. We look alike, and he was like, "Yeah, you just have that Tyner face." And then he was like, "Yeah, my older brother is Miles Davis, who I met." I had a chance to meet Miles Davis, and how many people can say that they met somebody like Miles Davis? But I met him and hung out with him, and it was just I've had a chance to meet some really incredible people in my life. So so we ended up working together. He ended up being my mentor, and then I ended up being his producer. And I was, we worked together for years.
On the show?
I produced his show, his radio show, and I was 18 years old, and he was like, "Here, take this opportunity." And then I was making $3.35 an hour.
From the east to the west, the flag's so light. If you ever seen them dogs swing open on your block, say I am Cleveland. Say what? I am Cleveland. Where the strip's so hot, but the swagger's so clean.
Follow me on Twitter at Colby Colb. Was that
shameless plug?
Yeah.
Shameless plug.
And I have a Facebook fan page, Colby Colb.